Everybody, give him a nice warm welcome. Neil Jacobs from FOMO21, and let's see, Neil has also helped us out with some artwork. I'll have to preview that for you a little bit later. In the meantime, Neil, come on up here, please, and say hello. And as you can see, we've got Mike, the Muzz, the one and only Jarmuz from Lightning Ventures, and Gonzalez hanging out in the wings. You can welcome them up. And Neil, hi, welcome, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Neil Jacobs. I own a Bitcoin apparel company called FOMO21. I also do marketing for all different types of Bitcoin companies. So, you want me to introduce myself just now? I was confused.
Yes, I know.
I also didn't realize I was moderating until right this second, so that'll be fun.
Is that so?
Yeah, but I have questions, so it's fine. I have questions. It's good.
You know, that's just how we
Do this one.
Just take that one. It looks like it's
Hello. I got two now.
I really didn't tell you ahead of time.
Whatever.
All right.
I already asked ChatGPT.
Well,
Hi, everybody.
all right.
So yeah, I guess first, maybe you guys should introduce yourself and what kind of businesses you're involved in the Bitcoin world.
Well, Neil, first I just want to say I'm a big fan.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. My name is Mike Jarmuz. My friends call me the Muzz Man. My companies are Lightning Ventures and Thunder Funder, and we invest in Bitcoin companies. Yay! That's right. The companies building on, around, or with Bitcoin, the most exciting thing in the world. And we have a way that you can also invest in these really cool startups for low minimums of just $1,000. You wanted to dip your foot in angel investing? What's that? All right. Oh, Voltage or FOMO21 or Block Spaces. You want to invest $1,000 and get started? We're the group for that. And that's Lightning Ventures, LTNG.Ventures. And we just launched Thunder Funder, which is a regulation crowdfunding equity portal where you too can invest even if you're not an accredited investor. So that's what I'm passionate about, is getting you guys started, making your first angel investments, and having some fun.
Hey there, John Burnett. My passion project right now is digital privacy education. So I'll be soft launching that shortly. We'll have a little friends and family review of that. But I've been doing hospitality and various things, always accepting Bitcoin, helping promote the circular economy. And yeah, we'll take it from there.
Yeah, my name's Gonzalez. I am a Bitcoin builder in Austin, Texas. We founded Pleb Lab in 2021. It's a community hackerspace and accelerator. We've been creating some really cool Bitcoin companies. Some of you might have heard of, like Zapright, Stacker News, Oshi, Yopaki, Jippy, Cascader, a long list of them since 21. Yeah.
Awesome. Hello. Awesome. Thanks, guys. So the panel's called Destin. I think they Hello. So the panel's called Destined to be the most profitable companies in the world. So I guess my first question should be, why do you believe Bitcoin businesses are poised to be the most profitable in the world? Or if not, do you not agree with that? So I guess we'll start at the end over there.
I think it's a really interesting time for Bitcoin companies. I think we're at a point now where I think the last panel talked about it really well, where for the longest time we had this place where Bitcoin was trying to fit into this fiat kind of old tech world where Bitcoin payments were into these checkout marts and these registers, and we're moving into this kind of paradigm shift where it's becoming more frictionless with like AI and AR and extended reality and the spatial computing world. And so what we're going to start seeing now is like with like all these L2s and Lightning, it's just going to become so frictionless. And so things are going to be moving very fast here in the next 18 to 24 months. And just kind of what we're seeing on the ground in Austin is a lot of these startups are just going to be doing these kind of creator platforms and these rewards platforms. And yeah, I'm super bullish on what's going to be built here soon.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think companies and individuals alike need to be in the Bitcoin ecosystem. It's really a different paradigm shift. It's a matter of survival, I would say, for individuals and companies. So profitability, I think, is great, but it's really a matter of whether companies exist or not into the future. And I think whether Bitcoin is successful or not depends on individuals, but it also depends on companies setting up the infrastructure to accept Bitcoin as payment, because if it's not a medium of exchange, then it's going to be a problem, and there's an issue with trying to sideline it as a pure store of value. So I think it's really a matter of necessity to say, do I want to live and function in a new paradigm or go down with the old paradigm?
Well, if I didn't think that Bitcoin businesses and startups were going to be outpacing the price of Bitcoin and the biggest companies in the world, I would just do something else. I would just golf. I wouldn't spend my time working with Bitcoin startups. We saw it with the personal computer revolution and the internet, and it's going to be the same thing. After I had a late night chat with another speaker last night about MicroStrategy, really made me think about a lot of different things. But, I personally think MicroStrategy is probably going to be like the most valuable company in the world, right? Because they're just holding Bitcoin, so per market cap. But they're not really like a Bitcoin company, right? They're just buying Bitcoin. But all of these companies that we invest in and we look at every day is what's going to happen when Bank of America adds Bitcoin? Right? What are they going to do? What is Uber going to do when they accept Bitcoin? Is it going to be an open node integration? Are they going to use IBEX? Are they going to use one of these type of startups? So that's really what we're investing in, is these type of companies, the companies like Fold, that are bridging the traditional finance gaps, on and off ramp exchanges all over the world, remittance plays. I mean, you name it, right? There's a whole ecosystem, everything from rewards, from invoicing. We invested in PlebLab. He mentioned ZapRight. We love ZapRight. If you use ZapRight, it's a great experience, right? And it's otherwise kind of difficult to get paid and invoice people, in Bitcoin. So we focus on that whole world of everything that they're doing, whether it's browsers, extensions, or wallets, or hardware wallets, security, IRAs, and everything that you can do, right? There's just a whole world of things. So you're earning your income in business, but you're also running your business on a Bitcoin standard, right? Like Neil's FOMO 21. He accepts Bitcoin for t-shirts, and he's also a psychotic lunatic in the cult with the rest of us. So he probably keeps a portion of his corporate treasury, or maybe doesn't convert that to fiat, and you're investing in these type of businesses that are already on that mindset. So you have the wind in your sails, just like Saylor, right, who's just basically buying and holding Bitcoin. All right, but then you're also earning your revenue in Bitcoin and keeping a percentage of it. You're mining, what do they say, mining fiat and keeping it in Bitcoin.
Thank you. I guess this next question, I'll start with you, Mike. In the last panel, they mentioned that, with the new administration, a lot of the regulatory risks have gone down, but I'm sure there's still risks you guys face on a daily basis. So I would say, what are the biggest risks to Bitcoin businesses reaching their full potential?
It was like pretty much impossible for the past 4 years for most of our companies. Not really like PlebLab. They have an in-person space. It's like a hacker space and, education. So they weren't really affected too much by, policy changes. But like under Biden, if you were a U.S. Bitcoin exchange or even touched Bitcoin in any way, it was nearly impossible to exist. It was hard enough. It's hard enough just to be a startup, right? You're a startup founder. There's already like 3,500 arrows coming at you all day long, and then on top of it, you get debanked. You can't even have an operating account for your perfectly legitimate legal business. That's pretty much the environment that we were in. That to me is still probably the greatest risk, and it just looks like it's changed. I think 12 SEC laws were just changed, I think last week. That makes it more favorable, and they're just really undoing a lot that the last administration did, and that to me is the biggest issue.
Just for anyone that didn't hear, he said, I think, how durable are these changes from one administration to another? Anyone want to answer that?
Well, I don't think they're very durable at all.
Okay.
And I don't think it's a smart move to count on the current system trying to fix something. I see that these dynamics will be pulled apart more and more and more, and most of the lip service is, I think, because they have to. Although I think you're going to see as the system starts dying, it will do whatever it takes to survive. And so I don't think that we should count on laws for anything, not digital privacy, not money sovereignty. I think everybody should start really looking into how to be self-sovereign with sovereign computing, sovereign money, be as private as possible, because when things progressively, probably this year, get really wild, then you're going to see all kinds of things flipping around, and there's really, we're past the point of trust, and we're past the point of representation. It's all corrupted. So I think we have to ensure that regardless of what happens, then we can stand our ground just as sovereign individuals running sovereign businesses. And if enough of us do that, then it becomes a barrier which has to be reckoned with until this old system starts to really fizzle and weaken.
Yeah, I would say, like, yeah, that's the question. You know, how do we look at it from like a startup perspective with the administrations that are changing and the laws? You know, when a founder comes into Pleb Lab, we advise legal right from the get-go. We have a lot of founders in our hub and in our community inside of Pleb Lab, and so we constantly take the side of non-custodial solutions, and then we lean on the founders inside of our network to advise the new founders that are coming through Pleb Lab. And so, you know, people like John from Zapright who have dealt with this in the past, you know, through the Biden administration, and then Keon from Stacker News who have also dealt with non-custodial wallets and then making that transition. And so that's where we shepherd in these new founders who are having to deal with, you know, the recent changes that Trump has signed into. I think there was a letter that he just recently signed that allowed people like Phoenix to go ahead and come back into the U.S. and even Wallet of Satoshi is going to be coming back into the U.S. These are Lightning wallets that weren't allowed in the Biden administration. So this is good news for the ecosystem. This is good news for people that transact freely on the open web. So I think you just kind of have to take it as it comes, as if you're a founder building into the ecosystem. But you have to kind of know what's going on and pay attention. And it's good to have places like, you know, hopefully one day Wesley can build out a hub here where they can go to for those kind of resources, because that's important.
Awesome. Next question, I guess we'll start with John on this one. You've dealt with being consumer-facing, hospitality, food and beverage, you know, restaurants. What are the biggest challenges dealing with people maybe that don't know about Bitcoin or know how to use it?
I don't know that there's challenges dealing with people that don't know it or know how to use it. There's always friction challenges. And when we started accepting Bitcoin several years ago, we had the Square POS and there was Cash App, and there was no integration between the two. And this was problematic because then we had to have this kind of workaround in order to accept Bitcoin, and we ended up using IBEX, and then we had a payment type that we had to manually do this thing. And it's, I think there are friction barriers that are since coming down. I mean, that's recently changed. But I think it's not about preaching Bitcoin to the customer. I think it's just about making it as equal as any other payment type. And if that is the case, if we have these integrations like Zapright's fantastic, I use Zapright. If we have this friction-free environment, then let the best one win, and we know what's going to win over time.
It's kind of funny that as a business owner, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to accept Bitcoin, and you weigh those options and you go back and forth, and then you finally say, okay, you know what, I'm going to accept Bitcoin at my dress shop, and then you got to find a solution for how you're going to accept Bitcoin, right? What am I going to use? Am I going to use OpenNote or IBEX or just a wallet? And then I got to train my staff on how to accept Bitcoin, right? Because somebody's going to come in and they're going to want to pay in Bitcoin. And then you do all that, and then you realize nobody's paying you in Bitcoin. Because nobody uses Bitcoin. So you spend all that time to do it, and then very few payments come in. At least that's been my experience. I had a bar in New York City. We accepted Bitcoin for all 8 people.
So what percentage of customers do you see use Bitcoin? Do you have like numbers on that? Any of you?
It's very low.
I mean, we're in Austin, so it's the Bitcoin mecca. And I will say this, like, if you look at it from Square and Cash App, those 2 companies individually, over time, Square has gone down as far as revenue. You look at Cash App, it makes like $4 billion a year. And so over time, you're going to see these financial platforms like Square become liabilities for people like Jack, right? Because, you know, all these financial products become, you know, like I'd rather be personally as a business who conducts inside the Bitcoin space, I'd rather be working with somebody who's Bitcoin native company, like a Thunder Funder or like a Zaprite or even like your company. Like, why would I take on that risk working with a Square who has all these liabilities, whether that's overhead with their with all these financial rails that are old and obsolete, right? I'd rather work with somebody who's native to the ecosystem and understands it at a very high level. To me, I see liabilities there all across the board. And so maybe not everybody sees it that way, but I think over time you're going to start, it just goes to the value add of investing in Bitcoin companies and Bitcoin businesses over the long term.
Yeah, I think for FOMO 21, about 10% of our revenue is from Bitcoin, but we're a Bitcoin apparel company, so you'd expect like you'd have Bitcoiners coming there, so we're probably going to have the most amount of people. So it's still, in terms of using Bitcoin as payments, we're still in the very early stages.
It only helps you to accept Bitcoin, right? It only behooves you to accept Bitcoin for whatever you're doing. You're mowing lawns, you're selling tickets, whatever. But like, it never really helps you to pay in Bitcoin. Right, we just coming here, somebody sends you an invoice, right? Why would you ever spend your Bitcoin unless it's a novelty and there's a lightning?
Or you're 100% in Bitcoin.
Right, you have no choice. But you know, it's a lightning beer tap, or you know, you're paying for your Visa in El Salvador with Bitcoin. That's fun, you know. But with the exception of a novelty, right? If I can get 3% cash back in Bitcoin with my Gemini credit card, why would I ever pay Bitcoin? Why would you ever use Bitcoin?
Well,
right?
I think the word's going to get out. I mean, look how many more people are here than probably last year. And people are just going to say, no, I don't want your fiat. I want Bitcoin.
So give them 15% off. I mean,
I'm still going to say no to your dollars. I don't want your dollars. I want Bitcoin, or get out of my freaking store. And that's going to, like, look at even Steak.
That may be illegal.
So
I don't think
it'll
you
be
can
like
actually do that.
No,
a
look
free
at-
market, right,
I mean,
of money.
Look at Steak and Shake. They're not even taking your dollars anymore. They're like,
Well-
you want my burger? Give me your sats. Like, have you seen the receipt on it? It says fiat amount. They're even dissing the customer and saying, this is how much. Like, the world is changing, ladies and gentlemen. You better get your Bitcoin now, because there's not going to be enough for everybody, and you're going to have your CBDCs and your eCash. Like, and that's not a diss on these things. That's just going to be for the poors, you know. And that's the world we're moving in very fast. So, yeah. I mean, Muzz is giving me that look like "shut up, car," but like,
No, I'm
it's
not.
true.
No, I want to read Steak and Shake's next earnings report, where they talk about all $7,000 worth of Bitcoin they did in the last quarter.
Yeah, I think that if you look at it linearly, which we can't, then it'll make sense that nobody would want to spend their Bitcoin. But you know, what will people accept? And we're getting into the time of hyperinflationary events and hyper destabilization, and it's not that the economy as it is and businesses as it is will remain so. We've built this entire world economy on a house of cards, and when it starts going, it's going to go quick. You're going to have real estate, stocks. Everybody's going to be poor. And so, you know, what are you going to trade with people that you've connected with? And even if we're not taking a lot of Bitcoin in right now, there's going to be a change, and you're going to wish you had the infrastructure to be able to accept it, and also the infrastructure which is not reliant on third parties and third-party custodians. So everybody should, really get familiar with BTC Pay and start 9 and start understanding, well, if I need to take this, how am I going to take it? And I am a big fan of spending in Bitcoin, earning in Bitcoin, saving in Bitcoin, because I don't want to be in the fiat system any more than I have to, right? And if that's not the most fiat measured net worth strategy, then so be it, because I don't see this as a net worth period. I see it as I want to get my kids to a future, and there's a lot of things that we need in order to get to that future. Not just Bitcoin, by the way. There's a lot of other things we got to cover because it's going to get rough. And I think that what's happening with the fiat system is they're stretching that perspective of the roughness and trying to keep everything looking real good. But when you peek behind the scenes, we're getting into it. So I don't know when that's going to be, probably this year. But then the whole dynamic changes, and people will be like, look, I want something real. Now, whether that's gold, silver, bullets, Bitcoin, beef, whatever it is, but I think that everybody should start thinking in terms of energy and value and not necessarily what's my fiat maximization strategy.
Yeah, there really is this paradox with Bitcoiners. It's like, you start a business. Why don't you accept Bitcoin? You start accepting Bitcoin. I'm never going to spend my Bitcoin, right? Like that's what you get. Over and over. I try the whole spend and replace thing, right? Like I went to Steak and Shake, right? And I spent Bitcoin, but I used like the Strike app, so I just converted dollars directly to Bitcoin. So I wasn't like using any Bitcoin that I hodl, but I feel good about it. I feel like it's circulating more Bitcoin, having more circular economy. So I think it's a good thing to get those, wheels flowing, personally. But anyways, I want to more about how Bitcoin affects your businesses on a day-to-day basis. So you hear like Michael Saylor say stuff like volatility is vitality. And obviously we know, if you want the upside wealth gains of Bitcoin, you need volatility. But I want to know, how does the volatility of Bitcoin affect the planning and strategy for your businesses? So whoever wants to take that first. Anyone?
Managing a corporate treasury on a Bitcoin standard is definitely tricky. Nearly all of our Lightning Ventures capital is held in Bitcoin, except what we have to pay in salaries every week. And sometimes that's great. And it goes the other way too. So, one of our portfolio companies, Scarce City, they do the art galleries at all the conferences, and they're a really cool company. 100% of their treasury was in Bitcoin. They had like 36 or so Bitcoin, and when Bitcoin was 18,000, they were making ramen jokes, and now they're feeling good about it. And if you're able to live like that, it's okay, but it really does impact it. And there are some companies, believe it or not, that are in the Bitcoin world that really don't have very much of the Bitcoin reserve and corporate balance sheet, which is sad, but they're not subject to that, and they're not seeing their runway tick higher with every price increase, like a lot of the other companies are. It's super tricky. I mean, it's basically like your own personal life with your wife or whatever you're doing, but for your business, and there's other people's lives are on the line. Thankfully, my wife has never said we have too much Bitcoin. That's good, but I'm sure that some.
You married a good one.
It took a while though. But yeah, it's definitely tricky, and I know that there's complex option strategies and all sorts of fancy things that I don't really know about because that's not really my business. Maybe I should GPT that and figure it out. But we keep all of our money in Bitcoin, and we're just YOLOing along for the ride.
Awesome. Are there any unique advantages to having a Bitcoin business versus like traditional businesses?
Yeah, I mean, just to tack onto the last one, I think for PlubLab is such a unique business in the space. We're probably the only unique business, I think, in this space. I don't think there's anything else like us. So we're a community accelerator / hacker space, and literally one of its kind. And I think we're going to start seeing more of these pop up, hopefully one in Tampa one day. But we hold Bitcoin on our balance sheet, and we hold Bitcoin companies on our balance sheet. So I think we're going to start seeing more of these types of hubs pop up. And then at some point, it'll lead to a private equity acquisition or some sort of that'll lead to Muzz and Lightning Ventures getting rich. Hopefully, we'll see. But I think that's such a unique thing that we'll start seeing more things happen, and you'll start seeing more micro investments into these kind of Bitcoin companies. We'll start seeing that kind of happen, because right now we're just seeing a lot of angel investments in these businesses inside of Pleb Lab and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like that's what we're seeing, at least in Austin.
I forgot what the question was.
If there are any advantages to being a Bitcoin business over a traditional business?
I don't really know the distinction unless you're talking about Bitcoin technology.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, I just look at it as a business, exchanging value. And so
Well, I guess you're like cutting out middlemen. You get like transaction fees could be less, things like that. So I guess there are some.
Well, yeah, I think that the advantage of the whole ecosystem is far superior from a consumer perspective and from a business perspective. But I don't make a distinction between a Bitcoin business and a regular business. It's just where are we moving to?
Yeah, it's just the tool you're using, right?
You get to build and work in like the most exciting thing on the planet. You know what I mean? Those that are out there doing, I don't know, something else, you know, don't have that. Like, you know, I was talking to Gabe and Rosa, right? They're working on a futures market for like block space. You know what I mean? For like transactions. You know, like that's gnarly. You know, I mean, everything that is going on in Bitcoin, I mean, you could look at every logo slide on there. I mean, look at the People's Reserve thing. That's crazy. You know, you're running the math in your head like you always wanted to tap your Bitcoin to get a loan. I mean, these are things that we like talked about and dreamed about in Bitcoin for like a really long time, and like they're starting to come, you know what I mean? And after everything that happened before with all the collapses and everything else, and now all of a sudden the lending is starting to creep in again, right? And like, let's see how it goes 2.0. But you know, the benefit to being a Bitcoin business is like you get to work in like arguably one of the most exciting things on the planet. Right, it's like Bitcoin and AI, and I don't know, maybe robotic lawnmowers somewhere or something else that somebody's doing. But I mean, that's pretty much. It's going to be huge. I mean, if you think Bitcoin is going to be huge, then the companies building with Bitcoin, whether they're Paul's ATM business or whatever they're doing, right, they're going to be massive.
Awesome. Thank you. What industries do you think Bitcoin will disrupt next? You could talk about existing ones it's disrupted, obviously like the energy sector. Is there anything on your radar that might not be on our radar specifically?
I think the ad industry is definitely happening. I think what Breeze is doing is really interesting right now with Greenlight, and we're testing stuff internally with like Pleb TV about there was a I forget the name of it, but there's an interesting way to do ads with Lightning, and I think maybe Rumble will probably test that at some point. But I think when you look at ads and you look at viewership and you look at where the ad industry is going, I think there's something to do there with Bitcoin and sats and stuff like that. And I think Sacker News and even Nostr has playing around with it. I also think the gaming side of Nostr looks really interesting as well too. So I do think there's this kind of this frictionless thing that I mentioned earlier that's going to be happening around those places, and I think Bitcoin fits perfectly in that arena because it's playing in its own playground at that point. It's not trying to fit into an old legacy system where it's been trying to fit for the past 16 years, and it's finally in a place where it can dominate. And I think that's going to be really interesting here in the next 18 to 24 months as we start playing with it a little bit more. Plus, you still have all those stable coins and stuff like that. So Bitcoin will have the upper hand in that respect. So I do think that's going to lead to more really innovative products And I think Jippy's one inside the lab that is doing that. And then we have Cascader, who's already making money on that side too as well, on the revenue side. So that's really been cool to see on the AI side. Yeah.
Awesome. So AI, ads, and gaming.
AI, ads, gaming, and then XR. So like any type of like as Apple and Snapchat and Meta, as they start introducing more of this kind of like augmented reality, extended reality stuff, you'll start seeing the open source versions of that as well too. And then you'll start seeing the prices of hardware come out, and then you'll start seeing the Bitcoin versions. You'll start seeing that stuff start coming out.
Interesting.
And then that's when it gets really cool. Like they just released, there's a guy with the OpenSets grant that just released a Nostr gaming engine that he's working on. That's going to be really cool. And then when you start putting that into Lightning and Zaps and everything, that just opens up a whole open source side of gaming that we just haven't seen before. So that's what I'm super bullish on, because imagine everybody being connected in this kind of like different XR verse, right? And we're all with our little Bitcoin handles. So like imagine seeing Muzz, you know, in this kind of metaverse that he's out shooting zaps and we're all talking in this kind of thing. And yeah, it's gonna be wild.
I will not be shooting zaps in a metaverse. I can give you my word on that. No, but he's talking about different industries, and that's what's cool is right now, Bitcoin is literally penetrating every industry. Like he mentioned ad tech. We invested in a company called Slice. They're just being acquired by Fold right now. And, you know, you get paid for every ad that you see while you're, like, searching the internet or where you're browsing, right? Every ad that you see, you should be getting a fair share of, you know? I mean, and micro payments and withdrawals allow you to do that, right? Crowd Health has a Bitcoin component. Like, is it a healthcare company? Yeah, it's a healthcare company, but there's a Bitcoin component, right? Wavelake with music, right? Music and streaming, that whole industry completely broken. I was in the music business for a long time. Like, that's broken, right? Fountain with podcasting, right? And value for value and everything. Like, Bitcoin is starting to be everywhere. Like, you know, before, what could you invest in? There were some exchanges, maybe there's some crypto stuff, maybe there's a couple of wallets. I mean, literally, like, Bitcoin is everywhere. He mentioned gaming, Thunder Games, the casual gamer, Aunt Mary and Uncle Bob playing solitaire, winning sats, withdrawing, turning them into Bitcoiners, you know? And, you know, what it's going to disrupt, I think, is you could literally go anything. We just came back from the Vegas conference, right? People were in Vegas, and you're at the slot machine, and none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense with the ticket and the fucking thing, and then it's like, there's $20.35 on this thing, and I put it in the thing, and it only gives me a 20, and then it's like, do you want to give your 35 cents to some charity in need? I'm like, can I just have my fucking 35 cents? And it's like, no, you got to go to the cage, because they're the only ones who have actual currency. It's like, this is built for Bitcoin, right? And that's just like in the casino. It's built for it. Or you're like leaving, and let's say that you actually won. I've heard it happens. But you actually win, right? You're going to carry out like $22,000 in your pocket. Like, it's ridiculous. You know, it's built for Bitcoin. There's just so many industries. Like, there's this stupid little thing when you go to the grocery store and you activate this, that, and the other thing. You play all these games, and then you get like $6 back. And then you try to withdraw it, and you're like sitting there with this withdrawal, and it's like, oh my God, I gotta get 25 minimum, and then I gotta link it to a PayPal. Like, Bitcoin should be everywhere. Like, it should be in all of those little micro things that we're doing every day when you're withdrawing and sending, and it will be one day. But it's just still so early. I know that that's everything that we always say, right? Is you're still so early, but truly it is. I mean, none of those Mag 7s are in Bitcoin. You know, there's no Bitcoin wallet by default, you know, on your phone. There's none of that yet, you know, so it's just still so early. But, I mean, I think Bitcoin is now showing up everywhere, and there aren't too many businesses that it's not going to disrupt, or if it's not particularly that business, it's how that business does business, right? How they settle their trade, okay? How they have their net invoices. I mean, everything that they do, you know, the HODL invoices. What was that one that does the you know, like the escrow.com type of thing.
BitEscrow?
Yeah, the escrow.com sort of innovation where you're posting a HODL invoice and, you know, there's an Oracle and all that stuff. You know, this is kind of nerdy junk, but it's all being worked on right now.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of zombie companies out there propped up by the fiat system, and it's going to, and is in real time, whittling through all of those. A lot of things I don't think will survive on their own. For example, the big seven or big tech, they are largely supported by and married to the government apparatus. And so I think as we start creating a hard stop to this leaching of human energy, the fiat system, then those will start dropping off. They can no longer be propped up. So I think advertising is something that's going to change dramatically. I think people are going to get very skeptical about all this stuff that they see in their feeds and all that. And all of this is just, human manipulation, which I think that's a very good thing to clear out the brush in the forest. So I think it'll affect everything, but definitely these enormous amounts of entities that probably shouldn't exist.
I will also say, just like being around founders in the Bitcoin space, we're just built different. Like, these are people with principles who are, just some of the smartest people I've ever run across, and they're, they really have some really great values, and I'm sure Muzz, you can kind of, you've just seen the amount of tenacity they have. They work harder and they work more with less, and really they've just been really inspiring to see some of the builders in the space. I mean, you guys would be, really inspired by some of the just how much they care about what they're doing for not only humanity, but for America and for the world. I mean, Muzz, maybe you can talk a little about that. Bitcoin
I invested in over 1,500 startups, not just Bitcoin companies, but everything, okay? And when the runway runs out and the cash runs out, you get a dissolution letter from the CEO saying, hey, sorry, this didn't work out, and blah, 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 and a little explanation. It's fun. You get to learn, and that's how I started angel investing. But what's unique about the Bitcoin founders is literally Bitcoin founders won't die. They have this ridiculous resilience. I mean, it's a miracle car's alive with Pleb Lab, okay? I mean, and they're doing great, but they won't die. I've had founders be like, Muzz, if we run out of money, it doesn't matter. Like, we are just going to keep going. We will just find a way. And I've never found that with a biotech startup, right? Or something else, an apparel company, right? They're not going to just refuse to die and keep going. And that's pretty unique, I think, for the Bitcoin builders and founders.
Awesome. What infrastructure still needs to be built to help Bitcoin businesses scale? What kind of service providers aren't out there yet that you think, oh, this would be helpful? Maybe Carr or John.
Yeah, I mean, from where I'm sitting, I think being in Austin, I think as far as the payments infrastructure, I think that's pretty much built right now. I think a lot of what Voltage did and what Lightspark's doing right now, and Breeze and Greenlight and and Zapride and some of these other big companies in the space are doing. I feel like a lot of that has laid the groundwork for, these next generation of startups that are coming out this year. I think that's all well and good. There's some really interesting stuff that's happening in the Nostraverse that's going to be getting built out. I think right now we just need some capital. I think we need some capital into the space that can inject itself into some of these innovative areas that we talked about earlier around the AI stuff, around the AR stuff. Just because I feel like we're seeing a lot of investments in the normie space that are investing in these open AI type of platforms, and there's the opposite of that in the Bitcoin space that are getting created, but we're not seeing a lot of investments in those areas. So I feel like we're getting left behind in that area, where if we had more investments in those builders, in the Bitcoin builders who are dedicating their lives to the AI stuff, the AR stuff, the extended reality stuff, I think that would help them, go at a faster click, because a lot of them are working off of grants and are working off of, just ramen right now. And
Yeah.
I think that's what the space needs.
If there's any investors in the audience, definitely look into this stuff and
Yeah.
help these guys out. And I think one of the challenges is that a lot of investors, if they just don't understand Bitcoin, they're not going to get involved with Bitcoin businesses. And those that understand Bitcoin are like, well, are you going to outperform Bitcoins, right? Bitcoin becomes the hurdle rate.
Well,
and that's challenging.
Yeah, I would say to that too is like I said earlier, like Bitcoin is now going to enter this place where it's frictionless and it's going to be able to dominate in its own playground. The other thing is you don't want to live in that dystopian world Tom was talking about earlier in the last panel. And the way you prevent that is you invest in the builders who are building with a Bitcoin principle, right? And the way you prevent that is by investing in them. You don't invest in the Sam Altmans of the world who are trying to get you to look into an orb and
so being like principled and
yeah,
having
yeah.
values.
So like you have to invest in the builders who are thinking about it from a Bitcoin perspective. Because because I'll say something super scary because it's headed that way. But the more and more we have these AI companies that are the Sam Altmans of the world, the more it's very likely a lot of that stuff leads to where you can have a Stripe or even a PayPal stop somebody from promoting their Substack who talks about the COVID vaccine and talks about all these things that could have could lead to people getting more sick and more if all that stuff would have happened. But if these people have their way with everything, then at that point what that means is all this stuff is automated. So you can send a Bitcoin payment or you could send a stable coin across these rails, and then at that point there is no like cease and desist letter that you get sent to from PayPal. It just automatically cuts your payment, and you don't have a route that goes through. It just doesn't go through, and you don't even get told no. You just don't get your payment sent, and that's what could possibly happen if you don't have these builders building the opposite of that. So that's why I think it's very important for the room to hear that. Like, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we just have 3 minutes left. So each one of you, like 30 seconds. What advice would you give to someone starting a Bitcoin business in 2025, a profitable one, hopefully? Any advice you'd give them? Just quick.
Yeah, don't die.
From a business perspective. Well, and
still, you don't want to
yeah.
die.
Yeah.
That's every day. I mean, you think about the business that you're trying to build, and you think about Bitcoin, right? Like, where do we need Bitcoin? On the last question, like, you have Anchor Watch now. We're not an investor in Anchor Watch, but if you heard of it, it's insuring your Bitcoin, right? Insuring your hardware wallet, insuring your Bitcoin at home, just like you would put a rider on your wife's diamond ring or anything else that you do, right? So, like, getting into the insurance, I'm excited for Meanwhile. They're going to give a presentation later. It's like Bitcoin-denominated life insurance, like, is really cool. Like, it's not a scam, I promise you. But like these type of things, right? It's coming into every area that we do. So when you're a Bitcoin, builder, founder, and you think, man, do you need your own Airbnb that just accepts Bitcoin, right? Is that a good business to build a separate
30 seconds, Mike. Advice.
Separate Airbnb?
Advice.
Or do we just need Airbnb to actually accept Bitcoin? So I don't know. It's all of that stuff. You can research, just all the product market fit, free videos on YC, read every Paul Graham article that he ever wrote, and just think about how big the business is that you're building. Because a lot of these obscure node management liquidity tools, like, it's great. They all need to be built and they're perfect for grants and stuff.
30
like,
seconds,
is
Mike.
it a venture capital business?
All right, John.
We need more T-shirts.
John, any advice you'd give to someone building a Bitcoin business?
Yeah, any business really. I would just say be as self-reliant as possible. Self-custody, sovereign computing, accept Bitcoin, understand how it works, understand the what-ifs of when this whole thing starts to really be apparently unstable. And the downside is really none. And so I think it's imperative that as many of us do that, and with strong individuals, businesses, and communities, then we'll be a lot better off.
Thank you.
The advice I always give people that are trying to build in the Bitcoin space is don't build alone. You have a higher chance of failing your business if you build alone.
A lot, yeah.
come find the builders, go to Pleb Lab, go to places like that, and build with other people around you, because they'll tell your ideas crap.
Where could everyone find you guys? Just really quick.
Lightning Ventures.
Okay.
Digitalprivacysessions.io, Digital Privacy X on Twitter.
I'm in Austin at Pleb Lab, or just shoot me an email, car@pleblab.com.
And you could find me, Neil Jacobs, on Twitter. I wasn't on Twitter this time. I was reading questions.
Love you,
so,
Neil.
Yeah.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you all for having us here.